I think that they are allergic to any form of criticism. There is an atmosphere of fear. There's an atmosphere of menace. In fact, when I was writing the book, people said to me, aren't you scared that Amit Shah cannot be unleashed in the way that he's unleashed him?
The wonderful thing about my guest today is that it is almost impossible to slot her. Just when you think you've placed her in one ideological camp, she'll say something that will completely upend all your assumptions and change your mind yet again. That, according to me, is what makes for a really interesting interview subject. So on Behest with Barkha today, it is my pleasure to welcome the author of the brand new book, Messiah Modi, Tavleen Singh, known for never pulling her punches and keeping things interesting. You were definitely a supporter of the Prime Minister. And in the book, you clearly identify that one point when you start questioning your support. And it is when the lynchings of Muslim cattle traders is becoming a dominant headline. Why was that in particular the tipping point for you? Because a lot of your critics, and you've seen this online, will turn around and say to you, Tavleen, didn't you know that this was, at its core, potentially an anti-Muslim party? Why were you surprised?
Well, you see, I've been a journalist a very long time, and I've seen through the secularism, the so-called secularism of the Congress Party in 1984 when the killings of the Sikhs happened. So I didn't really believe that he was less secular or less or more communal than the Congress Party. Also, I felt that he was unfairly treated in 2002 because what happened in Gujarat has happened in Gujarat many times before and has happened in Meerut, Malyana, Bhagalpur, and the chief ministers of those states, we don't even remember their names. Mm-hmm. So I was ready to give him a chance because, you know, I'm nearly 70, and I really want to see India prosper economically and become like even Thailand before I die. And so I thought I was ready to give him a chance and overlook this aspect of
So let me understand this. Basically what you believed, and I think there's some merit in that, is that secularism had become so corroded by politics, by cynical politics, and that had, in a sense, been practiced by other parties as well, who you believe the media was kinder about than we were about Mr. Modi.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you still believe that?
I still believe that. I don't think that you can pick out one riot, one communal riot, and it was a riot, and call it a pogrom when you know perfectly well that the only pogrom we've seen was with the Sikhs. Not one Hindu died. It was the Sikhs against the state. And it was the most horrible thing I've seen. And I've covered many, many instances of ethnic violence, you know, including when the Pandits moved from thing. But the one pogrom that really did happen was under Rajiv Gandhi, and the media idolized.
You don't believe 2002 was also a pogrom? In many ways, I see 84 and 2002 as bookends of our conversation on the state not stepping in when it should.
The state never does. The state has always been on the side of the majority community in a situation of communal violence. But I think that there were elements who wanted to actually, I believe this to be true. Modi was very new to the job, and there were Bajrang Dal types and Vishwa Hindu Parishad types, etc., who objected to the fact that he was not a Patel. And, you know, I think that they, at that point, were in a better position to control the violence and the police. So I actually think that they were more responsible, and he was not competent enough to stop it.
So in some ways, your impression of Mr. Modi, and I don't know how much of that still remains your impression, was that this was a tough leader, a personally non-corruptible leader who was going to come up and shake up the system, who was going to break a kind of cozy cabal of Delhi, and who was going to modernize India. There are people who look at how sections of the BJP have treated you and your son today, and we'll get to that later in the interview, and they say, come on, Tavleen, did you not see this? Did you not see an authoritarian streak, an intolerance for media criticism, and at its core, a politics that was constructed on courting the Hindu vote?
No, I saw it. I've covered the RSS from a long time ago. I see that they play on this paranoia. We have the most paranoid majority community in the world, right? So I saw...
Because Hindu victimhood is a kind of complete construct. I mean, it's been created effectively. What I mean is it's a construct that people have come to believe. It's a very successful political construct.
I think that a lot of Hindus genuinely believe, and to some extent I agree with them, is that this is the land that has given the world the Vedas, that has given the world mathematics, that have really contributed, that has had great emperors who were not Mughals. And the history that was taught, because it was controlled by leftists, was always to glorify Muslims. It was, I believe that. I think that when you talk about, just look at a history book in school. How much did you hear about Chandragupta Maurya? And how much more do you get to hear about
the golden age of history? I mean, I read history up till class 12, so...
Do you know that Amish Tripathi went to one of Ajit's colleges? It was an engineering college. And he was the guest speaker. And he said, how many of you studied mathematics? Everyone put their hands up. They were engineering students. And then he said to them, how many of you have heard of Bhaskaracharya? One hand went up. So let's not...
Is that Hindu-Muslim or is that colonization? It's the same way that I read Homer's Odyssey, but I did not read the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Gita. But I also didn't read the Quran in translation. It wasn't a Hindu-Muslim thing. To me, it was colonization.
No, I think that the textbooks, that the history textbooks, unfortunately, they've, not done much about those things, which I really hoped that they would. Sanjeev Sanyal has done more to rectify some of the lies that have been told about ancient India. And I, as a Sikh, I have to tell you, grew up really feeling that, Hindus are cowards and, we're great warriors and all this sort of business. And even though the partition violence was mostly between Sikhs and Muslims, there was somehow, an identity, maybe because there are Jat Muslims on the other side and we're Jat Sikhs. But that contempt I grew up with. So I was very sympathetic to I want not a Hindu Renaissance. I'd like an Indian Renaissance, along with the fact that I would really want to see socialism thrown into the garbage can.
That's a different argument. Do you agree with the statements from the RSS and so many BJP supporters that everyone in India is Hindu, that Hindu is actually a geographical description, it's not a religious description, that Muslims have to be assimilated?
There's no harm in that.
But then doesn't that make us a Hindu Pakistan?
No, it doesn't. Because don't forget that the Muslims have also been up to no good, right? I mean, there's a radicalization that the Islam that I grew up with in my childhood is gone. We now have everyone in a burqa and little girls in burqas in school. And so, they're up to no good as well. And I wish that they would make that distinction between the women in Shaheen Bagh, for instance, are not jihadis. They were genuinely concerned about citizenship being weaponized. And they had good reason to be, because, the speeches that the Home Minister made were so menacing that, and certainly if they do a nationwide, NRC, who are the people that are going to be picked out? They'll make sure that they don't make the mistake that was made in Assam. There won't be 11 lakh Hindus out of 20 lakhs or whatever the figure was. They'll make sure that the people that are weeded out or disenfranchised or made to feel that they're not fully Indian are Muslims. So those are not the jihadis, but there are jihadis. There are jihadi groups in Kerala. There are jihadi groups in Kashmir, as you know. And we have to deal with them separately to the wider Muslim question. You don't kill Muhammad Akhlaq the way you did.
Is there not a contradiction in your formulation? I agree with you that the women in Shaheen Bagh, I think, are standing up literally for their place in the Indian Union. And just because many of them, not all, happen to be behind the parda, does not automatically give anyone the right to slot them as extremists or jihadists. I agree with you on that. But when you say an Indian Renaissance is the same thing possibly as a Hindu Renaissance, there is a danger in that argument because it presupposes that some citizens have more of a right to this country than others. And therefore, in a way, that's the whole thing that's behind the NRC or the proposed NRC and the religious filter of the CA.
I said it wrongly. I don't mean a Hindu Renaissance.
Yes.
I mean an Indian Renaissance.
Which could be all religions.
Which I want school children to read Ghalib as well
Exactly.
as Kalidas.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm with you
I
on
don't
that.
want colonial education to continue.
I
I want
agree
the
with you on that.
decolonization of education.
I agree with you on the colonization dimension. Let's come to the book. The book talks about 2 meetings that you have with the Prime Minister. One is one-on-one. You go to present him an earlier book that you wrote, and one is in a group of journalists. Let's talk about the one-on-one first. The Prime Minister is quite expansive. You talk about a range of things. But when you actually say, Prime Minister, why don't you speak out on lynchings? He says to you, but then I'd be speaking every day. When he's saying this to you, how do you react and what are you thinking?
I thought that he was evading responsibility for stopping this from going any further. And this was 2016. So Muhammad Akhlaq was lynched in September or October 2015.
Yes.
So it was within 3 or 4 months of that, right? Or maybe it was just after Pehlu Khan. I'm not sure. I think Pehlu Khan was later. Anyway, I then realized that he was evading responsibility for what was going to happen. And I think that he already sensed that the Gaurakshaks, etc., was part of his base, and he didn't want to stop them. So that was, that really worried me.
And did that conversation definitively change your mind about how you had read the Prime Minister prior to that?
No, because you see, I had actually believed him when he said, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, etc. And I'd also believed him when he said that India needed a new economic direction, which I really believe is necessary if we're ever going to catch up with the rest of the world, right? And so I was still ready to give him a chance until, I think 2017, when I began to be really disappointed.
You write a lot about the Home Minister in the book, and you almost make it seem like the Home Minister is perhaps giving the Prime Minister a bad name. Do you not see them as a sort of joint project? Like, do you have that sense that because one of the interesting debates the citizenship legislation has thrown up is when the Prime Minister comes out and says, what NRC, where NRC? There was no talk of NRC, whereas Amit Shah had said it, I think 9 times by then, that the National Register of Citizens was going to follow the citizenship legislation. How do you see Amit Shah? I know you talk about it in the book, but not everyone's read the book, but the book does touch upon that.
Well, you see, to tell you the truth, when I first, I wrote in the book, we had to cut out a bit, I sort of saw him as almost a comical imitation of Narendra Modi. He was copying the way he spoke and copying his speeches, his manner. So I never actually began to take him seriously until these past few months, when it has become absolutely clear that, especially with Arun Jaitley gone, that this man is the face of the government and the face of the project that is Modi 2.0. And so, now I see him as differently. But in the beginning, I really found it hard to take him seriously because, I didn't see him as more than a sort of slightly goofy provincial politician.
Goofy provincial politician.
Yeah.
That's how you saw him, even though he had been exiled from Gujarat in these fake encounter allegations, which he's later acquitted of. He was seen to be Modi's closest aide, even within Gujarat.
Yeah.
You never saw him in that all-powerful...
I didn't see him as a kind of menacing sort of person. I think that his real side, it's my fault that I didn't see it, but I think that the real side of him, the real personality of him, has emerged only since he became Home Minister.
You write in the book about how you meet him at a conference in Goa of the India Foundation, and you say, Mr. Shah, as journalists do, I'd like to come and see you in Delhi. He's extremely cold. And he says, well, yeah, if you'd like to, which is a kind of, a brush away, a brush off. And you decide, of course, I'm not going to follow this through. You have been, till you changed your mind, a supporter of this government. Why were they cold with you?
I'm not sure. I think that they are allergic to any form of criticism. And I was not aware of this until, actually, oddly enough, a Pakistani friend of mine, one of their favorite Pakistanis, was, he was in Delhi and he was sitting and having dinner.
One of their favorite Pakistanis.
One of their favorite Pakistanis. And he said to me, do you know, they're a bit upset with you. And I said, why? He said, I met these people, मेरी पहुंच है ऊपर तक वगैरह, and वो कह रहे हैं कि पहले तो हमारा इतना समर्थन करती थी, अब पता नहीं क्या लिख रही है, etc. So that was the first time I became aware that they were annoyed with me. But I certainly, my access, I never got another chance to meet the Prime Minister.
Did you ask to meet him?
I tried a few times, yeah. Because you see, I met him once before he became Prime Minister. I was summoned to Ahmedabad because I actually created that whole idea of Lutyens, Delhi being terrified of him, etc. Big mistake. But anyway.
You got slotted in the narrative that you built.
Yeah, I did. But also, I have to say that I was ready to give him more than a chance because, I'm part of that ruling elite. And so are you. And I believe that we've been a very corrupt, effete, irresponsible elite.
Explain that. I don't know if I want to take on all those labels onto myself. Do you?
Right. I'll tell you.
I get the sense of what you're saying. You're saying this has been a pampered elite. It's been a...
They were only interested in themselves. And I actually write that in the book.
Yeah.
For us, the real India was that the water wasn't clean enough and there were mosquitoes in the summer and the air conditioning kept going off. And I don't think that we ever saw the wider India. I went to a boarding school in Dehradun, and I promise you, I didn't even know that India was a poor country. I promise you, for us, poverty meant that you didn't have enough pocket money, etc.
And then you became a journalist, and journalism has pulled all of us out of our little cocoons.
Yes.
That's the, bless it, it's continued to do
other
that.
elites, for instance, the elites in Europe, they've gone to war. Some of our, the Sikhs princes have gone to war. But by and large, the industrialists, the business community, the middle classes, have remained away from any responsibility for what this country has been. And I think that is bad.
One of the things you write in the book is you say that you were willing to give Mr. Modi a much longer rope because you felt that we in the media had been much kinder to Sonia Gandhi by contrast.
Yes.
Can you give me an example of a kind of kindness that you think the media showed Sonia Gandhi that it doesn't show Mr. Modi? Because when I look at the media today, I actually see most of the media being totally captured and most of the media being very eager to please the establishment. And there were shades of that before also, but perhaps not as acutely as today. I don't know if you agree.
Well, I think that the media houses that were kowtowing to Sonia are now kowtowing to...
So just establishment area.
Yeah. But I'll give you an example of what I mean when I say that Sonia and Rahul have been treated with kid gloves. When we talk about this Prime Minister diminishing institutions, think of the fact that she diminished the institution of the Prime Minister by making him report to her. That's as bad as it gets. The cabinet under Sonia Gandhi, and it was her government, so let's not pretend it was Manmohan Singh, was subservient to the, what was it called, her little kitchen
NSC,
cabinet?
The National Advisory Council.
Right. That bunch of NGOs who no administrative experience, no political legitimacy was given it, and the media barely talked about those things. Barely talked about them. With Modi, from day one, Just go back to 2014 and you'll see they started attacking him and, the institutions are going to the dogs, all right? Okay, then she comes from a family that has presided over some of the worst communal violence in known history, right? And she was given a pass on that as well. Whereas with him, there was a little student, I think I even read about this in the book, a computer scientist in Pune who was bashed up by Hindu, fanatics, and they blamed Modi for it. Everything, two of those three intellectuals that were the radical, whatever, I forgot.
The rationalist,
the rationalists,
yes.
right. Two of them were killed before Modi became prime minister. That label was stuck on him. So, I remained sympathetic because I just kept hoping that he would actually he would tear down the power structure of Lutyens' Delhi, which is very, very corrupt and very evil. They shouldn't be living in those houses. They shouldn't be. He's done none of that.
So, Vanity Fair, the magazine, used to have the old establishment and the new establishment. Do you believe that the new establishment has replaced the old establishment? Instead of the Modi government getting rid of the Lutyens' Delhi, there's just a new Lutyens' Delhi?
There's a new elite.
Yeah.
And it seems to be an elite that wants to rewrite, wants to remake India. For me, I'm very worried about the Central Vista plan that they've got. When the city of New Delhi was being built, my grandfather was one of the contractors in that building. And, they looked around for the best architects in the world before they laid out that Central Vista, right? And now this little unknown architect from Gujarat, who no one's ever heard of, is suddenly being given the task of remaking the center of New Delhi. So, I don't know. This elite seems a little bit worse than us, I don't know.
You speak out. Why are there such few people speaking? Why do you feel, or do you feel that there is a greater environment of fear today than there was in previous regimes that you've observed? I'm not necessarily saying Congress, BJP. You could compare it to Vajpayee. So let's just look at this kind of looking over your shoulder. For example, I meet people from corporate India all the time, and they all complain non-stop about the state of the economy, about tax rates.
And they don't dare speak.
And they don't speak.
There is an atmosphere of fear. There's an atmosphere of menace. In fact, when I was writing the book, people said to me, aren't you scared? And I think it's a very fair account of his first term in office, and a very fair concern in the last chapter that we must hope against hope that it doesn't get worse than it already has.
One of the lines that leapt out and stayed with me is you're talking about how the Prime Minister seems to have changed. This is somebody you've met when he's Chief Minister. He becomes Prime Minister, and then you see this change and you say there's a certain coldness in him. And it's almost this sort of like messianic smile.
Yes.
And like he's talking to someone ordinary was a difficult thing to do. I remember the sentence. What about him conveyed that? Like, what was it that you were picking up?
See, the old Modi that I used to know, he was in Delhi as well, and
Oh, yeah, we all knew him. He used to be the BJP headquarters in rubber chappals and a kurta pajama. Was extremely approachable, accessible.
But, he would smile and friendly. Then what I've now started to notice, and much more since he won the second term, is a kind of, he walks like that. As if he doesn't even see us mere little human beings wandering about. And that is very worrying because, I've covered many prime ministers. And when that starts to happen, we need to worry.
In your conversation with him, when you meet him one-on-one,
he doesn't meet me one-on-one.
When you did, he speaks about his battles or struggle with the media. He genuinely believes the media is unfair to him. And the media, I think, genuinely believes that this is a very pro-Modi media. At least now it is. Would you say that?
Yes, I think that there are at least 3 major TV networks
that are completely establishment area.
No, there are spokespeople. The Doordarshan of today.
So why does the Prime Minister, in your opinion, you think this is still the 2002 hangover, where you describe this conversation in the book and you say how they were picking on his clothes and his watch, and they were sort of presenting him as this person who had very expensive taste, whereas it was quite a modest set of things that he was wearing. What did you say to him when he was talking about the media?
Well, you see, when he...
Because he hasn't had a single press conference. I just want to underline that.
Yeah. When he starts, I barely managed to get in a question or two. Do you know? I mean, he goes into a stream of consciousness, and then he has to speak, and so I mean, I couldn't really argue with him, but I did say that you need a media. I did manage to put that in. I said, like the White House has a press conference and a press room, it's time that the Indian Prime Minister had that kind of connection with the people, right? Because I felt that was actually that he was in an echo chamber. Yeah. And it's always dangerous for politicians, political leaders to be in. But I don't know whether he listened or he paid no attention. I mean, I don't even know anymore whether it's that guy, what was his name, who was handling the media. I don't know who the new man is. Oh, I think I heard the name, what is his name?
Are you talking about Jagdish Ji from Gujarat?
Jagdish Ji's gone.
Yeah, I know. Are you talking about him?
No. After Jagdish Ji, there was that guy who was... Anyway, the name escapes me because, I didn't talk to him that much. And now there's this guy called... who I would try to get in touch with, for Atish. I've forgotten his name.
Okay, let's come to Atish. His name doesn't matter. We'll come to that. Your son is declared a persona non grata by this government. His overseas Indian card is cancelled quite coincidentally after he writes a Time magazine cover calling the Prime Minister the divider in chief. And you're accused, or he is accused rather, of withholding information that his father was Pakistani. Now, a lot has been said on this. Atish has been on this program. He says that the whole world knew who Salman Taseer was. It was never hidden, and this is purely to do with my criticism of the government. You knew many people in the BJP. I'm sure you worked the phones. What happened when you tried to get them to listen?
You see, this is the thing, that when they did this, when they wrote the first letter, and they gave me 24 hours, not 20 days.
Yeah.
I then tried to contact Amit Shah. I managed to speak to I must have run 10 times a day because I can be very persistent. And he said, Hanji, hum bata denge, abhi wo tour pe hain, vagera. Then I called that man who's in charge, Joshi.
Hiren Joshi.
Hiren Joshi, right. I must have sent him 20 emails. I must have called him 200 times a day. He never once got back to me. So I knew that what was being done pretty high up. Now, the thing is that actually, if anybody can be accused of withholding information, it would be me, because I'm the one who, I brought him here when he was 2, and then when he was 18, he was given these multiple entry visas, long ones. And I said, what to do? And I went to the FRRO in Lok Nayak Bhavan, and they said, multiple entry kyun le rahe ho? Aap PIO bana do na inko. Nobody said to me, inka baap kaun hai, kahan ka hai. That came in later. And so then when Atish reapplied, or whenever they had to do it, I think Salman Taseer had been shot dead, was a hero for fighting for the cause of the women they're trying to rescue from Pakistan. He actually died defending a Christian woman against this blasphemy.
Which is the whole construct of the Citizenship Act.
And Atish was estranged from him. He had a brief connection with him. And then there's been an estrangement. So I knew that he had a British passport. So he rang me and he said, what should I say? They're asking me if he was Pakistani. I said he was born in India and he had a British passport and his mother is English. So, maybe he gave it up when he became, but we had no way of finding out. I'm certainly not in cozy with his widow or anything like that. So we had nowhere to know. So it wasn't any withholding of information. It was just a vindictive, act.
So did you think that if this could happen to somebody who'd actually supported them, can you imagine what would happen to those who don't?
Yeah, well, be careful yourself.
But when you dialed the phone, did anyone call you back? Did anyone try and help?
Not one person. Not one person.
None of the people who've become friends or contacts over the years.
I actually managed to meet Chopin. And Chopin said, this, that, and the other, and then never managed to get back to me on that. And Ashok Malik was kind enough, because you see, not only have they taken away his OCI, but they've actually warned him that he could be blacklisted for lying to the government. Lying to the government, I mean, it's just bizarre. So I actually wanted to find out from Ashok whether it would be possible, because giving a visa is in the hands of the foreign ministry. But that's as much help as I got.
And how did you feel at that moment? Because, I mean, you obviously felt distraught enough to put Atish's grandmother on social media, saying, Mr. Modi,
that was Atish's
plan, yeah.
That wasn't anything to do with me.
Thinking it might touch a chord somewhere.
Because you see, she's going to be 90, my mother. And she
said she likes Mr. Modi in that
She voted for him. My whole family has voted. I have a sister who's a little Hindutva fanatic. I mean, she wants Modi and she loves Amit Shah, right? So they've actually attacked a family that the whole family supports them. And my mother is really, I feel bad for her, because, I can, as long as I can afford to, I can go and see him in New York. She can't. And it's her 90th birthday. And this is her favorite grandson. And so I feel really bad for her.
So this title of the book, The Messiah, is it ironic? Is it the way you saw him? And then did the title become ironic? Is it how you think he sees himself?
I wrote a column when I noticed this messianic streak, and, when he was really beginning to change, his demeanor changed. And so the column was called Messiah Modi with a question mark.
And today, how do you see that?
It's still a question mark. Maybe he will realize that you cannot divide and rule and will elections. Maybe Delhi will be a lesson.
You're still hopeful, because your Indian Express column argued that Delhi was a just punishment.
Yeah.
So what gives you hope today? Do you have any hope at all?
I'm a very optimistic person, and I think one must always hope. If you stop hoping, then, we can just forget it and lie down and not do why should I write columns?
But, this whole notion of being a messiah, this cult of personality that has come to define Indian politics in some ways, where does somebody who's not comfortable with the BJP in this avatar, but doesn't think the Congress is worthy of being a national opposition, where does that Indian citizen go today?
These younger leaders, Chandrasekhar Azad, even Kanhaiya Kumar, I don't agree with their communism, but these are they give me hope. The pushback against this weaponization of citizenship gives me real hope in Indian democracy. And that the fact that, that the Muslims were not wrapping themselves up in the Quran, they were, wrapping themselves up in the Indian flag and holding the Constitution. That gives me real hope. And I think that maybe the pushback will be a lesson for the Prime Minister, and he will realize he's got 4 more years, right? And Rahul Gandhi is his greatest asset. I mean, he should be doing Aarti to Rahul Gandhi photo every day, because every time Rahul Gandhi has opened his mouth in the past few months, he's gone and given him, he's gone and reminded us why he won a second term. He also won because he did very well with those welfare programs and things.
Right.
But, the guys, it's just hopeless. You can't say, 6 maheenon mein dande marenge. Because for a start, you're talking about the office of the Prime Minister as well. And during the campaign, I don't know whether you went into... I met villagers who said, isko to bolna hi nahi aata hai. Iska mansik santulan bigad gaya hai. And something like that must have happened. How can you talk like that? You're talking about the Prime Minister of India, dande marenge aapko.
I know you've written a separate book on this Darbar, on the Congress party and the elite sort of coterie it built around itself. But I want to ask you where someone like you, who is clearly a right-of-center person on economics, socially liberal, probably center-right on matters of national security, probably culturally rooted in wanting to see an Indian renaissance. Where do you see your political choices, your political hopes? Because I think that's a question for a lot of people. And I used to say in the 2019 campaign that what I heard most often from people was, "Aur kaun hai?" This is the aur kaun hai election, right? And that continues to be the question, at least on the national stage. So who would you... Okay, let me ask you this directly. Do you still support the Modi government? Do you still see yourself as a supporter of the Modi government?
Not so much of the government.
Of the Prime Minister?
Of the Prime Minister, I still hope that he will, will realize that Amit Shah cannot be unleashed in the way that he's unleashed him. So that he begins to... I've written a column just now, which is coming out shortly, saying that, he's made it clear that he's the Home Minister for Hindu Indians and not for Muslim Indians. That's very bad. This is not a small minority. With the Sikhs, we were talking about, what, 16 million, 20 million? We're talking about nearly 200 million Muslims.
But your argument puts the whole responsibility on Amit Shah, not on the Prime Minister.
I still think that the Prime Minister is maybe not fully behind this.
So why would he not intervene?
I think he might.
Why would Amit Shah, for example, say after the event that Goli Maro Salo Ko was wrong and not say...
That's what I'm saying. I'm beginning to see already that, maybe he's been, the leash has been shortened.
But do you still have qualified support for the Prime Minister above other political contenders?
I think, for a start, I really believe in democracy. He's the choice of the people of India. Who am I to defy that choice?
I ask you that question because the book is somewhat about your own journey as a supporter to becoming, I don't know the word.
Disillusioned.
Disappointed, disillusioned.
Disillusioned.
Where does that disappointment, for which you've paid a personal cost, not just an academic or an esoteric one, where
Let's
do you
say
stand
that
today?
I'm very disillusioned, but because I believe, that's why the last chapter is called Hope Against Hope, is I really hope that, because he's got 4 years.
And you keep looking to him for economic reform. So explain that to me in the end, because nothing in the Prime Minister's record actually suggests that he believes in that reform model that you are talking about. He seems to believe in strengthening public sector units. He seems to believe in more government, not less, right? So there is no evidence.
But I believed him. I'm, an innocent. I believed him when he said government has no business to be in business. I believed him when he said India needs to dream of prosperity and not just removing poverty. These are words that are music to my ears, because for me, the welfare model of the Congress Party has mostly kept poor people in poverty. I don't want to see poor people in India. I want everybody to be lifted out of poverty. And I believe that democracy, liberal democracy, and free markets is the recipe. I thought he believed it too.
But the sentence you use is that you feel that India may be sliding irrevocably into being an illiberal democracy.
Yes, that is a concern. That is.
And yet you have hope against hope.
Because I'm a hopeful person, Barkha.
So last question, if you were to meet the Prime Minister and you had 5 minutes to say one thing to him, what would you say?
I would say, please, Pradhan Mantri ji, ये मेरी किताब है नहीं वाली और आपने दरबार बहुत शौक से पढ़ी थी, ये भी पढ़ लें.
उसके बाद, किताब के बाद क्या बोलेंगे?
Then I'd say कि थोड़ा सा आप देख लें कि बाहर से आपकी छवि क्या बन रही है.
The global image?
In India as well.
Tavleen, pleasure as always talking to you. Please do pick up your copy of Messiah Modi, A Tale of Great Expectations.
Immediately.
Pick it up immediately. Thank you.